I bought this Panagor 21mm f4 lens for £20 on Facebook, which is a really nice price, and it was also, to my surprise, in a very great condition. No haze, no scratches, no fungus, and it was just clean. The reason why I bought this lens is that I think that this would be a great affordable alternative to the MIR-20m 20mm f3.5 lens, which is supposed to be the copy of the Zeiss Flektogon 20mm f4 lens, as the MIR-20m prices has risen to the same price as the Zeiss, being sold around $400 to $600, which isn't really in the realm of being affordable. While the Panagor 21mm f4 can be found for more affordable prices, but this lens is also sold as the Vivitar 20mm f3.8, as they are both manufactured by Kino Precision Optics, also known as Chiron. Both have the identical schematics, just unsure why they have a different focal length and aperture. But these lenses can be found for a fraction of the Zeiss and MIR, as you can find the Vivitar sold for around $50 to $150, and I bought the Panagor for $20. If we compare the schematics with the Zeiss Flektogon, it was quite a surprise that the Panagor and Vivitar actually have a similar design to the Zeiss. Could almost say it's a Japanese Zeiss copy. Now back to the lens, the Panagor has a front filter thread of 82mm, same as the Vivitar. I'm able to mount my VND filter on it without any vignetting. However, because it's such an ultra wide angle lens, you just can't really be bothered with clamping on a matte box, especially when you are using this lens on a full frame sensor. Most matte boxes would vignette with such a wide lens. The Panagor I've bought has a M42 mount, but it's also available in other SLR mounts like the Nikon F, Pentax K, Canon FD and more. I'm using the Fushnit adapter to adapt it to EF mount like most of my other lenses. Also, because this lens is so wide, you can easily capture wide angle landscapes, wide establishing shots of buildings and streets. The image of the lens is sharp enough to capture a good usable image, and when you aim the lens at a brick wall, we can see some barrel distortions, but at least the image is pretty sharp and also sharp in the corners. However, when we focus into infinity, that is a little bit different. We do have a little bit of a soft side. However, this is only on full frame. If you are using it on APS-C, you will mainly crop out the soft sides and pretty much have a sharp image. Panning the lens, we can see a lot of perspective distortions, but this is mostly due to the fact that this is an ultra wide angle lens. Capturing an image of a person, a medium shot would still look fine. However, getting close up, the perspective distortion will make the person look quite distorted, which could fit with a crazy vibe for a crazy scene. Even though this is a ultra wide angle lens, you can focus all the way to 16 centimeters from the sensor and get a really crazy close-up shots, capturing plants and more in a way you haven't seen before, as you can capture just a few centimeters away from the front glass. And depending on the lighting, you have to try and avoid causing your own shadow cast onto the subject. But also capturing small objects with this lens can get you a quite nice blurred out background behind the subject. When focusing the lens, we can see there is a slight swirl with over bokeh when we focus to the minimum focus. However, it's not very pronounced when we are focusing on subjects that is further away, as it's quite a wide angle lens and a deep focus already sets in when you are focusing to half a meter. The swirl and over bokeh is most pronounced at 20 centimeter focus, and when we letterbox the shot, we get a very anamorphic like look. This lens does suffer from some focus breathing, but it's only really noticeable when you're doing a long, fast rec focus. The focus ring rotates 300 degrees, which is quite long for accurate focusing, though this lens focuses from 16 centimeters and hits infinity at 5 meters. It feels more difficult to rec focus from close to infinity with one single smooth move. The focus ring on the Panagor has a diameter of 17mm if you want to know which size autofocus gear you need to buy. Because this lens is so wide, it's actually quite prone to lens flares, especially because it has such a big front glass, and also because it's 82mm and so wide, it is quite difficult to actually use it with a combination of with a matte box, because certain matte box would actually cause vignetting because this lens is so wide. With full frame on Aperture-C it should be better, but on full frame it should be a little bit difficult to avoid vignetting with a matte box. Get a cine shade with this lens, because that is probably the only way to keep the lens flare away. However, the lens flare does add to the image and it does looks quite nice most of the time. The aperture ring is on the back of the lens and it goes from f4 to f22 in quite a big steps. The lens has 6 aperture plates, which does result in hexagonal bokeh when you close down the lens. Because the widest aperture is at 4 at night, you mainly have to boost up the ISO. I had to use ISO 6400 to even 12,800 to get a good exposure on my Sony a7C, and honestly I was still able to capture great images because most new cameras can actually handle those high ISO values. But still, the other issue is because I am boosting the ISO, I'm actually getting more lens flares compared to daytime, especially with a lot of street lights around. You have to actually, at night also need a matte box or a cine flag to hold off the lens flares from street lights that are shining into your lens. This lens could also be a nice combo with a gimbal, as the lens might look big but it isn't really too heavy with only 350 grams. And because the lens is so wide, it's quite easy to get like stable handheld shots, making it quite easy to do these kinds of parallax movements, making it look like that I'm using a slider, but these are actually handheld parallax movements. However, if you need to walk with the lens for a shot, I do suggest to use a gimbal because walking with it is still quite shaky. My conclusion, I would have preferred a faster lens, but this is a good affordable alternative to the MIR-20m. Also, you might want to build up a Panagor and Vivitar mixed lens set. Though they aren't all Zeiss copies, they do have a lot of interesting fast f2 lenses. But overall, the lens does a great job as an ultra wide lens, especially at the time of recording this video. The prices are still quite affordable compared to a lot of other ultra wide vintage lenses. Also, the wider the lens, more often harder they are to find. And this could become more expensive in the future when more people get to know about this lens. Hope you found this an informative video. Like and subscribe to see more, and thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.